Very, very welcome back to the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. Now, over the last number of years, we've covered an enormous amount of information. We have created and produced over 220, 230 videos, some of them from 8-10 minutes up to 45 minutes or an hour long. We've covered, as I said, an enormous amount of information, and we've shown quite clearly that there has been serious corruption in the investigation and the trial and the conviction of our son Aaron. We've covered the area where a vehicle stolen in Clogherhead on the 23rd of January 2013 that was allegedly used in the more than robbery at Lordship Credit Union, how that was brought into the court, and how we have shown quite clearly all the times, all the evidence in respect of Aaron James Flynn, in respect of the theft of that car, has been completely tampered with and to all intents and purposes completely useless, insofar as the vehicle that was actually used in the more than robbery was a silver or grey Passat and not the blue Passat stolen at Clogherhead. Evidence has shown us that clearly. We've shown that all the evidence from the murder scene shows clearly that Aaron Brady was not there. The evidence has shown clearly that James Flynn and Brendan Traynor weren't there. And obviously that is backed up by the fact that these two men were acquitted of being at the robbery at Lordship Credit Union on the 25th of January 2013. We've looked at the details of the alleged, the burn site where the car that was stolen in Clogherhead was burned out. We've shown how severely tampered with the evidence was, how it was so manipulated, and how evidence was brought in, how evidence was hidden. Fake evidence brought in and evidence hidden that would prove that Aaron Brady or James Flynn had nothing to do with the burning of that vehicle in Compton's Road in South Armagh. So all those aspects, the three important aspects, the theft of the car, the murder scene and the burn site, all involved showing you, the public, that there is no gang related to, that can be related to Aaron Brady in respect of the more than robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And it is something we have covered on numerous occasions, and obviously we'll have to continue to cover it because we have to highlight what it is that the mainstream media have done in conjunction with the Irish authorities, the Garda Press Office, and Garda Síochána and the DPP, and the story that has been peddled by all of the aforementioned. And I suppose to cover this aspect of the gang again, we start at the beginning. It goes back to these pictures here that were released within 7 to 10 days of the more than robbery at Lordship Credit Union. This is the Sunday World, and you can see the 5 pictures there. So this is the rabbit hole that Sergeant John Maroney and Pat Marry, Investigating Officer Pat Marry, and the members involved in Fort Apache in the incident room in Dundalk Garda Station. And we have explained this from the beginning, and our story has been consistent, unlike that of the prosecution on the Garda Síochána, which has changed, moved and been, shall we say, very liquid in its movement so far in gaining a false conviction of our son Aaron. So just this picture here on the Sunday World, as I say, this is from very shortly after the more than robbery in 2013. Obviously you can see there's a silhouette picture there, so that's out right away. There's no one to fill that position. And again, it's important to mention here, there was 5 people. We're 100% sure, everyone's 1,000,000% sure there was 5 people involved in the more than robbery. Can be seen quite clearly, 4 men jumping across the wall at the back of the Lordship Credit Union, and the female getaway driver. So that's a given. That is our base point. So to bring all those to justice who committed this heinous crime and murder Detective Adrian Donoghue, there will have to be 5 people incarcerated and imprisoned. So obviously there's someone missing here. They don't know, they can't fill the position, and this is at the early stages. Then beside the silhouette, you have a young girl who was accused, and Brendan Grehan and Coughlan Stain mentioned this girl on a number of occasions during the early part of Aaron's trial, when it was more than apparent, and we have shown this quite clearly, that at the time Garda Adrian Donoghue lost his life, this girl was on her way from Dundalk back home after having a hair appointment with a hairdresser in Dundalk, which is clearly visible on CCTV footage and easily followed, which we have shown. So there's someone else that wasn't there. Then we have, that's Aaron in the middle, and although we live in a situation now, and obviously Aaron's living in a situation where he is incarcerated for the murder of Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue. Now, we've shown this on numerous occasions, but it is fact, it is detailed, it is something that again the mainstream media seem oblivious to. The man who shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue was at least 6'1", possibly 6'2", long and skinny. There is no getting away from that. Those facts are solid. It is shown quite clearly in CCTV footage, the height difference between the 2 raiders that approached the Garda car. Aaron Brady is 5'7", and there is no way that it is possible. Aaron Brady did not shoot and murder Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue. It is as simple as that. So that's another member of the gang gone. Next, I do believe, we'll say the next 2 are the 2 men that were acquitted. There we go. Those 2 people are gone. James Flynn and Brendan Traynor have been eradicated from the murder scene at the Lordship Credit Union. So this is the state of play of the rags like this underworld. And this same story with the same people has been peddled through all the mainstream media over this last 11 years. And at some stage, some of these bottom-feeding journalists are going to have to admit, and they are going to have to come forward and say at least that this is a completely false and manipulated story that has led to the false imprisonment of Aaron Brady. Because, as we said before, there is no gang. And then we have to follow up on this. We have to show some substance to what the media have done, the mainstream media have done, and what the DPP and Garda Síochána have done. And they have perpetuated this story continually. And we see here, just going to run through a few of these. The Irish Independent, Garda murder gang of 5 warned, you'll pay. Then we have the Irish Times. Garda say they have evidence linking other South Armagh men to Adrian Donoghue murder. We could show you scores of mainstream media coverage of events that have absolutely nothing got to do with South Armagh. And yet they managed to squeeze it into articles, and it gives allegedly some kudos to their story. And it's been done on scores of occasions. And again, it's been used here. We use the tag South Armagh, and unfortunately the connotations that go with that are negative because of the mainstream media. And contrary to what the mainstream media do publicise about where we live, we are normal people living here. We have teachers, doctors, nurses, students, farmers, construction workers, all normal, everyday people. And not the way that it has been portrayed by, as I say, these gutter journalists. They continue. We'll get rest of Killer Gang, the Evening Herald. And again, similar pictures there. And you can just see underneath the picture of Aaron and just above the picture of Detective Donoghue, you can see 4 pictures there. And we have proven 2 of those men have been exonerated. The 3rd man there that's in the picture, I would suggest, is James Flynn's brother. And we have shown clearly, without any shadow of a doubt, that young man was in his house. CCTV footage proves clearly he was in his house, in his home, with his girlfriend at the time Detective Garda agent Donoghue lost his life. The mainstream media and the persons who wrote that are more than aware of the facts of what they've written there is a complete tissue of lies. Another one here, Garda seek to trace bunch of 5. And again, we have the same issue. They're trying to peddle the same story when it has been proven now in a court of law that over 30% of the gang are innocent and were not at the modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And we have there the people who perpetrated. Obviously, you see Pat Marry on his phone there, Detective Pat Marry. And this story has been continually perpetuated by those you see there, Beggy, Mark Phillips and Mangan. And they continue to peddle a story that they know is false. And there is no doubt that these people know that they have let their colleague down. And what they're doing is a complete disgrace to the name of their colleague, Adrian Donoghue. And the person who shot and murdered Detective Guard Adrian Donoghue is still at large. And that gang is still at large. Whether they be in London, whether they be in Coolock, whether they be elsewhere. But those people who shot and murdered that Garda are still at large. The continuous rhetoric by these people here that all these people would be brought to justice. We will be knocking on the door, Garda warn other suspects. And you can see it clearly there that this is all rhetoric, it's all show, it's all bluster, it's all four-hat and no-knicker stuff. It's absolutely disgusting because all the people standing in those 2 photographs there know they've made a complete mess of the investigation. And I will repeat once again, there is no gang that can be linked to Aaron Brady. This gang does not exist. It never did exist. It was made up. And they continued to perpetuate this story, and even Garda commissioners, all the Garda commissioners since 2013 have rolled out, as you see here, Noreen O'Sullivan, we'll bring the killers to justice. And this is from April 2014, and subsequent commissioners have made the same claims. But they cannot follow through on those claims for the simple reason they will have to release Aaron Brady, admit they got it completely wrong, and I do not know, we do not know, how they will reopen the investigation into those who did commit this murder. Whether they be somewhere in London, whether they be in Coolock, whether they be anywhere else on this island or any other island. This is the problem they have. And we had numerous attempts by Garda Síochána to push this false narrative through the course of Aaron's trial. And I think one of the worst and most blatant attempts at doing this, not but there were numerous attempts during the course of Aaron's trial, but this one we have covered before, but I just will put it up here again for you. I'll just put it up on the full screen. Outline of concerns of evidence given. Now, this is our concerns for evidence that was given during the course of Aaron's trial. The prosecution have named all the following individuals and in our opinion are using these names as fillers to create a fictional gang who carried out the raid and murder. This was clearly evident when Garda Karen Coughlan gave evidence in front of jury and the court that JK, that is Aaron's ex-girlfriend JK, had manually altered the details of numerous contacts, including these 4 or 5 people here: EM, JH, LC, Jimmy and Eugene Flynn Jr. in her phone. So that would be, that was actually done, the allegations made by Garda Karen Coughlan. She put all these young men's photograph up on the screens in the court, and she said that this young girl manually changed the details of these people, these 5 or 6 people, at 2:59 a.m. on the night of the murder robbery at Lordship Credit Union. So in the middle of the night, approximately 6 or 7 hours after the murder, that this young lady had manually changed the details of those I've just named above. But this is what actually happened. Garda Karen Coughlan told a tissue of lies. It transpired that this was a complete misrepresentation of what actually happened. In fact, the young girl's phone updated automatically, undertaking thousands of actions and changes to her phone. So this is something that happens, it happens to us all. During the night, our phones update, and I think there was somewhere in the region of just over 10,000 alterations to the information on our phone. It was a standard update by her phone and service suppliers. And Garda Karen Coughlan stood up and told a tissue of lies and tried to suggest that this young girl manually changed 5 or 6 specific pieces of information. Totally disgusting. Our definition of this misrepresentation is lies under oath, which is perjury. We are also very aware of the intensity of the investigation. We know it is ongoing, now in its 11th year. We are certain that every avenue has been checked, every communication between every contact and all phones have been checked. There are at least 859 undisclosed documents, some of which I am certain give details of Aaron's acquaintances, and again we are certain all of these have been checked. It's simple that these people have tried to, the authorities, Brendan Grehan, Senior Counsel for the prosecution, Coughlan Stain, Junior Counsel for the prosecution. The senior investigating officers must have told Garda Karen Coughlan she had to have been instructed to mislead the jury and mislead the court. There can be no other explanation for what happened in the court back in 2020. And that was only on Garda Síochána and the DPP to mislead the court. And indeed, we have Brendan Grehan to try and eradicate, because they had no phone evidence against Aaron and his friends, they tried to suggest that the phones were thrown away and some other form of communication, i.e. a walkie-talkie or whatever, walkie-talkies had been used, which is quite possible. But no walkie-talkies or any other devices could have been linked. Viable devices that could have been used could have been linked to Aaron or any of his friends. So that was a complete and utter lie. And as you can see here, Brendan Grehan stood up in the court and told the jury and told the court and Judge White that because of the mountains and water in the Cooley area and on the Cooley Peninsula, they had serious problems with phone data and collecting an analysis from anyone's phones. Lies, Grehan. Lies, lies, lies. Totally misleading. You are fully aware, because of other serious court cases in that covered that area, that what you said in that courtroom was lies. The same as what Garda Karen Coughlan said, a tissue of lies. And again, this is all done to try and create a gang linked to Aaron Brady and his friends, which does not exist. It never did exist. It is completely and totally made up. It is fictional. And as we say, there has been a continuous attempt by the media to create this gang. And if we go back, I think if we look here, we can see there's some intrepid reporters here, and most recently Nicola Talent and Donald created a podcast in respect of it was a cheap shot at a picture of Aaron being taken to hospital with a shoulder issue, the Mater Hospital. His picture was in all a double page spread of Aaron Brady being taken to hospital in Dublin for a check-up on his shoulder. And we called Nicola Talent and Donald out on this, and they created a podcast. And the podcast totally contradicted what Nicola Talent had done a number of years ago. There it is, we won't hide cop killers, and there's Nicola and up on a rock, very I don't know what it's like. It looks dangerous. I'm not sure if it was or not, but it's quite possible it was dangerous. And in the course of her article here, she told us, and you can see the picture of the young man there, and she suggested in her article that this young man, his brother, and their sister were involved in the modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union, which has been proven to be totally and completely false. The young man pictured here was in a restaurant at the time Adrian Donoghue lost his life. His brother was out of the country, and we now know that his sister, who Brendan Grehan and others named in court, was having her hair done at the time Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue lost his life. And she contradicted all that information that she gave back in 2013 and went on to do another podcast, which we have covered. We've made a number of videos in respect of Miss Talent's podcast in respect of Aaron going to the Mater Hospital, and the absolute bullshit and lies herself and Donald spewed during the course of the podcast was disgusting. It was lies, and it showed the utmost disrespect for a member of An Garda Síochána who had lost his life in the course of his duty. But it's us showing you, the Irish public, that the mainstream media are going to continue to peddle the story to the bitter end. But that end is coming very close for the DPP and the Garda Síochána, and we most certainly hope it is very bitter. And we can show quite clearly how the intention from the beginning was to create this false narrative. And if we go back to when Aaron was arrested, just bring up here, a second man arrested in connection with the death of Garda Adrian Donoghue. A middle-aged man was arrested in Dundalk at 10:45 p.m. on Monday night in connection to the murder of Garda Adrian Donoghue. It is understood he is not one of the gang involved in the ambush on Garda Donoghue. However, a source told the Mirror that he is believed to be related to two of the gang members. Now, this story was peddled by a number of news articles, and we see one here from the Irish Post. A second man has been arrested in connection with the murder of Garda Adrian Donoghue in County Louth in 2013. The man in the 60s was arrested in Dundalk yesterday after a man in his 20s was arrested for the same crime, and that was Aaron was arrested, and this man was arrested in Dundalk the following day. Aaron was arrested on the Sunday, this man was arrested on the Monday. Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue was 41 when he was killed in the line of duty. He was shot dead outside Lordship Credit Union, Belogan, near Dundalk, on January 25th, 2013. The first man held for the murder was arrested in Dublin on Sunday evening. So I do believe this is by Stephen Breen, another intrepid journalist, who should by now know that this second man arrested was related to Eugene Flynn Jr. and Jimmy Flynn. And Brendan Grehan and Coughlan Stain, on numerous occasions during the course of Aaron's trial, suggested that this man in his 60s was in some way head of logistics in respect of what took place at the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. Now, we have shown, and it has been proven, and it has been discussed during the course of Aaron's trial, that the man arrested here and allegedly head of logistics was involved in a family dispute with the two boys, with Eugene Jr. and with Jimmy Flynn. And at that time in 2013, they were not on speaking terms. There was no communications between these men whatsoever. So here we have a situation where the head of logistics is not even talking to the gang members. There's quite an acrimonious family dispute ongoing at that time. And again, the mainstream media, and this has been discussed in the courtroom, and so the mainstream media are aware of it, and information can be found within the Dundalk courts, family courts. The man that was arrested in his 60s had actually lodged with the court in respect of the dispute going on between the family members, photographs of the, shall we say, the fuel laundering plant that was ongoing on this man's land, and that is where Aaron was at the time of the murder and robbery. So not only did the Garda Síochána and Dundalk not go to the yard when they had photographs of it and pictures of it in January 2013, they didn't go to it when Aaron told them that's where he was at the time of the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. So again, this narrative thrown out there and created by the authorities, the guards and the DPP, but the story is being perpetuated by the gutter press continually. When the evidence is all there in the public domain to be scrutinised, to be looked at, and the duty of any journalist is to put the full story out for the public to read. Surely that is your jobs. And you continually just pepper out what the Garda Press Office give you and what the Garda Press Office allow you to print. And if you have any argument against us on those points, we would be more than happy to discuss them and argue them with you at any given place, time, on any platform whatsoever. But the evidence shows clearly that you, the mainstream media, are fully aware of everything that was ongoing between the man in his 60s and the two young Flynn brothers at that time. You were more than aware. It's all documented, it is there to be seen, and the bottom line is there is no gang, there is no logistics, head of logistics that can be connected to Aaron Brady. It is all made up, it is fictional. And you, the mainstream media, have all those details. If there's any gaps or points you're unsure of, please come and ask us. And if we're proven wrong, you can highlight that. That's not an issue. Indeed, Judge Hunt in the most recent trial, probably because, in fairness, Judge Hunt and the other two judges may not have access or have had the knowledge of the dispute that was ongoing between the two Flynn brothers and the man in his 60s. So there may have been that caveat for Judge Hunt, but he did say this man should be investigated. And as and when the time comes, this man in his 60s, and the evidence sort of given in the court, I know it's very difficult to explain, but there is, excuse me, there is a very clever way in which the prosecution name things, put little bits of information up in respect of cars and silver Mercedes that, shall we say, are lies. And we do have the details and the facts of the correct times at Sav Electrics, Fitzpatrick's and at the Credit Union. So that won't slip by in upcoming appeals and in retrials. That will not be missed again. And that narrative of head of logistics will be where it should be, on the rubbish tip. So in order for there to be some sort of a relevant gang that we can link Darren Brady and to his friends and put them anywhere near the modern robbery, for that to have happened, there had to be some sort of link. And because they weren't using the phones, because Grehan told us some lies and bullshit about mountains and Carlingford Lough and Dublin and Dundalk Bay, there was some ambiguity about how they were going to handle this, the authorities. And then they came up with this completely false narrative, and was very, very, very vital during the course of Aaron's trial. And indeed, they tried to push it through again during the course of James Flynn and Brendan Trainor's trial. The authorities, Grehan was at it again in association with junior counsel Mr. Stain. And these headlines here will give you some idea of what we're talking about. Inactive phones, unusual, murder trial told. An intelligent analyst, Mr. Edward McGooey, has said it was unusual that the phones belonging to the Garda murder accused and two other suspects were inactive around the time of the fatal shooting at Cortes Heard. The jury in the trial of Aaron Brady, 29, has been hearing evidence of mobile phone activity between the accused and a number of other people on the day of the murder. So we have here a Garda intelligence analyst. This is a part-time Garda, and unfortunately this gentleman wasn't available for James Flynn and Brendan Trainor's trial. He had other issues, and it's just a point of information that Mr. McGooey, Edward McGooey, who gave evidence during the course of Aaron's trial. And again, I will say quite clearly here, we have it where Mr. McGooey committed perjury. He told lies about his correlation of information in respect of people involved in diesel laundering in South Armagh. He was asked had he done a specific piece of work. He said no, he had done no work in respect of diesel fuel launderers and those involved in South Armagh. And then a whole matrix of information was found, and guess who the author was? Mr. McGooey. Now, Mr. McGooey wasn't available, as I say, for the most recent trial because, unfortunately, you can see here in breakingnews.ie, aircraft with cocaine worth 8.4 million believed to have travelled to France and Belgium. And this is the Irish News. And Kenneth Fox wrote this little article. A plane suspected of carrying 8.4 million euros worth of cocaine into an airfield at Abbeyshrew, Longford on Thursday afternoon had left the same airfield the day before to fly to Dieppe, Normandy, where it is believed the consignment was loaded onto an aircraft. And unfortunately for Mr. McGooey owns this little private airport over in Abbeyshrew, where it has now been disclosed that several millions of euros worth of cocaine has been coming into Ireland to poison our young people through this airport in Abbeyshrew. Now that's just a point of information for the man that was dealing with that. And this man, along with Coughlan Stain and Garda Kenna, created a theatre, an absolute theatre in respect of phone activity between Aaron and Aaron's friends. And the theatre, they did try to perpetuate this theatre, as I say, through the trial of James Flynn and Brendan Traynor, but they were very badly caught, because as you can see, the inactive phones were unusual. Another part of that article there. Yesterday, Edward McGooey, a civilian member of Garda Síochána, continued giving evidence in relation to cold data records. Asked by the prosecution counsel, Coughlan Stain, if one phone going silent was of relevance, the witness said this in itself was not unusual. Mr. McGooey added that what was unusual on January 25th was that phones went inactive, stayed inactive, and were reactivated over a very similar period. And this is the period here. And again, in respect of the gang, the fictional gang, the inactivity in the phones was restricted to 3 people: Aaron, James Flynn, Brendan Traynor. James Flynn and Brendan Traynor have been acquitted of being anywhere near the mother Lordship Credit Union, and the robbery had absolutely nothing to do with it. So this graph in itself isn't worth the paper it was ever printed on. But nonetheless, it shows how the authorities are trying to portray a complete and utter false narrative. Excuse me. Now, the black pyramids there are just activity in the phone, and you can see from 8:30 until just after 10:20 the phones are inactive. So that means that there was no activity on those 3 phones, and this was perpetuated and driven home, particularly by Coughlan Stain, and indeed with the assistance of Mr. McGooey, who owns Abbey Shrew Airport, where several millions of cocaine has been imported into this country. Those 2 men created a story that this was highly, highly unusual. I think it was mentioned a number of times, even in the opening statement or the opening presentation by the prosecution to the jury. But the opposite is true. Brendan Traynor's phone during the course of January, from the 1st of January to the 28th of January, was inactive on that time period 18 times. James Flynn's phone was inactive in that time period during the course of January, the 1st to January 28, 2013, for 16 times. Aaron Brady's phone was inactive for those time periods from the 1st of January to 28th of January for 15 times. So any assertion by McGooey and Stain that this is somewhat unusual is lies, it's false. It's a complete and utter attempt to mislead court and jury, and it most certainly did, because it was a vital part of the prosecution against Aaron during the course of Aaron's trial. Now, the reason for those activities, I presume in and around this area where we live, phone connectivity and phone signal is very, very poor. And on Garda Síochána told us ourselves, where Brendan Traynor lived, virtually no coverage. Where Aaron lived and where Aaron was walking in the yard at Cullaville, virtually no coverage. Now, there's no issue whatsoever, contrary to what Grehan says about mountains and water. There is no issue with coverage if the phones were anywhere near Lordship Credit Union, out on the Cooley Peninsula or in around the Dundalk area. There would absolutely be no issue with coverage. So this, along with Grehan's story about water and mountains, Karen Coughlan's story the story about the logistics manager, the story about phone silence are all lies. They're lies told to the court, to the jury and to you, the Irish public. It is as simple as that. It's all a false narrative. A false narrative that we have had to sit through and endure. A false narrative that has been perpetuated by the gutter press. None of the gang printed on the front of the Sunday World, none of those people had anything to do with the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. The gang does not exist. And indeed, we had a situation where Grehan Stain tried to suggest that there were at least 7, 8 or 9 people. There was other people on the outside of the gang. No one else has been questioned. There is no one else on the outside of the gang. They don't exist. It's false. It's lies. Complete and utter lies. And these lies has brought us to a situation where our son has been convicted for a murder he could not have committed. And they perpetuate this, that there is a gang. And as I said, all the videos we've done, the 230 videos plus, the interviews, the podcasts, all that, we've created a lot of information that shows all the vital points in respect to the murder of Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue, the investigation and the prosecution that took place. It is all lies. There's not a scintilla of truth in anything that Grehan, Stain, Phillips, Marry, Maroney, nothing, not a scintilla of truth. Nothing holds any water with them. And we have to continue, I'm not going to say beg. I wouldn't beg these bastards for anything, the mainstream media. All that information is in the public domain. And yet, Nicola, Talent and Donald continue to perpetuate and put forward a narrative that is a tissue of lies. So that covers a little bit about the gang. I think we will try and break it down a little bit more, go into more details on certain points of it. It's quite a long video. I thank you for sticking with us, but it is vitally important to show what these people have done. What they've done to our family, what they've done to our son, and what they've done to all the families involved, all of the families. Because the people, I will say once again, the people, the scum that shot and murdered Detective Garda Adrian Donoghue are still at large. And that is the fault of Fort Apache incident room in Dundalk Garda Station. Nothing got to do with Aaron Brady or the Brady family. Thank you so much for watching once again. Please continue to like, comment and share, and we'll see you very shortly in the next video. Thank you.